Welcome to the One Mindful Minute, your very oasis of daily well being in the busy world. You may already know you have the power to transform your world, but have you fully tapped into it? In this podcast, I'll share how to unlock the power to enhance your life through the art of living well. With insightful interviews and guided practices, we'll uncover the secrets to inner calm and wellness. It is time to tune in and transform. I'm very excited to have my friend Jill Weston joining us all the way from Mexico today. Welcome, Jill.
It's good to be here. Thank you, Fawn.
So I'll tell the listener a little bit about you, and then you can take it from there. So Jill and I have met during Yoga Nidra training, right?
Yes.
That was, I can't remember exactly how many years ago. Do you?
My first training was 12 or 13, and I think for us it was 6 or 7.
Was it 16, 17? I
think so.
remember. Yeah.
I lose track of time, but I think so.
Yeah. So Jill has been such an inspiration the very first day that I met her, because she actually brought a friend to the training with her. And I'm like, how do you do that? How are you able to get your friend to come to a meditation training with you? Bring your own team of your fan and your potential influence people, right? To create the shortcut of your ripple effect on the meditation. So Jill, why don't you share a little bit about how your experience has been? Because you've done the training twice. So
Yes.
What was I guess what I'm trying to ask is, what was the experience in between, like from the first training or maybe even prior to your first training?
Sure, I can share a little bit. So for me, what was interesting was I had never heard about Yoga Nidra at all before I attended the training, and that's very unusual for me. I had a background in some practices, but also everything from when I was 14, I was training horses, and they were all kind of crazy horses. And then I worked in juvenile correctional facilities in California. So I also worked with people that sometimes were a little more obstinate, needed a little more help, and that included staff and the people who were locked up. So all that to say, I was also a pretty practical, somewhat analytical person, and anything that I ever decided to study or to learn about, I always did my homework with it. And I would check out, like, is this for me? What's the cost of it? What am I going to do with it? I always wanted to have this game plan, but many of my game plans also had this overlay of my different perspectives, my different input. Like, is it worth doing this? How is it going to work? Like, I wanted to know the outcome. So I share that because I ended up at my first Yoga Nidra training almost 13 years ago, not knowing anything about it. Had never ever practiced Yoga Nidra. I had practiced yoga asana, yoga movement, and I loved shavasana at the end. So I'm driving down this road to an ashram, which is it's like a yoga school, can be a yoga retreat for people. And I'm thinking to myself, what in the world am I doing? What is practical Jill doing? And to this day, Fawn, I do not remember where I even got the information for the teacher training at that time. And it was through the California College of Ayurveda, Dr. Mark Halpern. At that time, he did not have a newsletter. He was not on social media. I was not on a mailing list. So 13, 14 years later, I still say Yoga Nidra literally found me and moved me out of that. We call it the beta brainwaves, just the thinking, the planning. What is this about? And my very first session, I just knew that I wanted to help people through Yoga Nidra. I was not confident that I could do a teacher training at that point. That didn't come for a couple of years. And my busy brain still questioned, could I lead sessions like Dr. Halpern did? But I had a knowing in my heart, in my gut, you were supposed to do this.
Wow. Purely intuition, right?
Yes. And my intuition had gone to sleep for a while, which we'll talk later about what Yoga Nidra is. And I ended up attending, I think, a total of probably 6 training sessions. I kept going back because I felt confident, but I wanted more. I love being in groups, love meeting people like you. And there's a couple of us that still stay in touch. But I really just wanted that deeper understanding and more experiences before I started offering sessions. And I took a lot of people back because I just wanted everyone to experience Yoga Nidra. And I remember at one of the trainings, as we were doing the graduation and the celebration ceremony or the puja at the end, and I'm not a super emotional person, but I literally felt this overwhelming emotion and I broke down into tears. And many of the people that I brought with me, they were like, "Are you okay?" And they're touching me. And I was literally like, "Move away from me. Like, just leave me alone. Let me have this moment." And it was an understanding, an awakening that that's where my business was born. Like, I named the business Breathing Space because I literally want to give people breathing space to figure out what they want. And it was just this pure shock, pure energy. Like, yes, you were to do this. This is where you woke back up again. And this is where your breathing space was born. And so again, it was a session, another training session that I attended, but at the end of it, it was like a clear message to me that I let Yoga Nidra in, that I let it wake me up. And that was, again, I think the 6th training that I attended. And then I went to a training for trainers. So again, just in summary, out of the blue, said yes to something I didn't even know what I was saying yes to. And it's just been a beautiful path for me.
Yeah, because when I met you during your 2nd training at the ashram, you have this notebook, I remember, and you said, "This is going to be the name of the business that I'm starting, that I want to start," right? And you said maybe at that time, you said you were looking at space to conduct this business. And you said, "What do you think of this name, Breathing Space?" I remember you were asking people that were in the group, and we were like, "Wow, she really determined, and she come in with the plan and very focused."
I had forgotten that, but yes. And again, that was still like that critical thinking and planning and mixed with the knowing. And I did end up buying a commercial space to hold sessions. So and it was purely a meditation studio. I didn't do any yoga classes in there, any of that. So I had forgotten that story. Thank you.
I remember you had a really good size studio. It's very, very calming energy in there too. Even though you were all the way in Sacramento area and I live in the Bay Area, but I remember Lally, another student from the class, and her niece and myself, we drove all the way to Sacramento to attend your session.
Yes.
That's just say how good you are, right?
Well, thank you. Thank you. And we were all are lovers of Yoga Nidra and that practice. And it can create a beautiful community as well.
Yeah, its community is really powerful, isn't it? It support our personal practice to go so much further than we're trying to go by ourselves.
Absolutely.
I'll just have you, for some people who haven't heard of Yoga Nidra before, and then they're probably thinking, what? Yoga what? Right? I'll have you give a little bit of a light on this definition of Yoga Nidra and what exactly is Yoga Nidra and how is it different from other form of meditation practice.
Sure. And feel free to jump in if you want to, Fawn. You did a beautiful job on one of your prior podcasts about all the different types of meditation, the benefits and really easy ways to access. And that's something I do love about Yoga Nidra. I feel it's fairly accessible for people. So I'll give a couple different definitions or insights on Yoga Nidra because some of the listeners out there, some people like more of a scientific approach, some people like very practical. So the first thing that I suggest to people, and sometimes they get confused because when I say to people, "Hey, do you want to try Yoga Nidra or do you know anything about it?" They're like, "Oh, I don't do that yoga stuff. I can't do headstands. I'm not flexible. I don't like the heat. I don't like," and I'll say, "Okay, can you bring a pillow? Can you bring a blanket? Can you lay down for 45 minutes and listen?" They're like, "What? Is it like a nap?" So I'll start again with a couple different definitions. The word Yoga Nidra, yoga for some people, and there's, many variations of terms, especially mythological terms or old historical terms, but just for ease of understanding, yoga and nidra. Yoga generally is accepted that it's a union, a coming together of body, mind, spirit. Yoga is not just a physical practice. The Sanskrit word nidra means sleep. Well, for listeners, they're like, okay, you're saying we're not going to do headstands. We don't need yoga clothes, but we're also not going to sleep. So the nidra word refers to being asleep to who we are, being asleep to our essence. So being asleep to who we are, or having fallen asleep to who we are. And the idea is with Yoga Nidra, you are coming into a space. You are coming into this sense of going within so that you can wake up. Now, for some listeners, they may go, okay, I'm still not getting it. Here's another way that I explain it, that it's a little bit scientific, but I'm not a scientist, so I'm going to share a little differently. And this refers to the way the brainwave states will change in Yoga Nidra. So normally think about we are in beta brainwave state, and it's completely helpful to us. It's not that we should not be in it. Right now, Fawn and I are in beta brainwave states because we're talking. We set up ahead of time. We know what time it is. I'm giving you information. So it's a fairly high functioning state. You're planning, you're remembering things, you're figuring things out. The downside sometimes of beta is we can also be in what we call the stress response or the fight or flight. So in beta, like right now, I am aware enough that if someone came in the room, I'm going to look over, I'm going to go, do I know who that is? Is it a threat? If I hear noises, I'm going to go, oh no, I need to do something, adjust my headphones. So it's very much a problem-solving brainwave state, and it's a way that we get things done. We wake up, we look at our to-do list, we figure out what we need to do, we get it done. The problem can be, as I mentioned, that to-do list is, as we wake up, we are coming out of theta and alpha brainwave states. It's a very creative, very restful state. And sometimes the first thing we do is look at our phone, we look at our to-do list, and then all of a sudden that fight or flight is flared up. And we go through our regular day, but we're not the most thoughtful. We're not the most creative. We're not the most organized because there's too much going on. So back to Yoga Nidra again, you come into the session, you're in that beta brainwave state. I have to do this. I have all these worries. I have this trauma. The world is a mess. I have all these things I need to do. Myself or Fawn get you lay down to relax, and then we lead you into theta and alpha brainwave state. That is the state where you remember that the dinosaur is not chasing you. You are not in fight or flight. Your to-do list is not chasing you, and you can go within and go, how do I really want to be? What do I really want to do? So in the theta and alpha brainwave state in Yoga Nidra, you are going back to what we call the intention. There's a word called sankalpa. Like if you had, and this sounds a little Pollyanna, but if you had no worries in the world, if you had no barriers in the world, if you were so in touch with yourself and so in touch with your resources, what you needed, and your guidance, how would you be? And then there's one more way that I explain Yoga Nidra. So again, we talked about the Sanskrit word, waking up to your essence, the brainwave state. And then the way I explain this is usually easiest for people. And that is right now, as you're listening, imagine that you have a backpack on, or imagine that you have a bag in front of you, or even a box. And now imagine that all the things that you have ever told yourself, all of your experiences, all the things that people have told you are in that backpack. Then imagine that the heavier things are the negative things, things that people told you that you couldn't be, you are, the missed opportunities, the things that you didn't do are in that backpack, weighing you down and pulling you back, or they're in that bag and it's heavy. So in Yoga Nidra, you go into this relaxed, intuitive, inward state, and you're like, I don't want to carry that backpack anymore. You imagine, or you kind of start to unzip the backpack and look at what's in there and go, wait a minute, that's in the way, that's in the way, that's in the way. I don't want that anymore, and I want to put it down. Or you go to your inner guidance, you see some things and feel some things, and it's like, ooh, that's a lot of backpack. That's a heavy bag. You ask parts of yourself, hey, can you help with that? Can you like look back there and unzip that bag for me? Because I'm not ready for all that. The other beautiful thing about Yoga Nidra in my mind is it's like having a It's this calm, beautiful, deep conversation with yourself. You don't have to share it with anyone else. It's almost like going to a therapist, but you are your own best therapist. You're saying things like, do you want to look in the backpack for me? I didn't know that was there. So it's about a 45-minute process. It's a guided sequence in the way that Fawn and I were taught. We do ask you to stay awake. So we guide you through different parts of your body, relaxing the body, noticing the body. And then the Yoga Nidra state is that moving into, now that I know the dinosaur is not chasing me, now that I have this backpack, how do I want to be without the backpack? And we have you do some visualization in that state and rest in that state for a little bit afterwards. That's a way that I describe Yoga Nidra for people. I can share a little bit later of people's actual experiences, but that's kind of my 3 different ways of describing Yoga Nidra.
Love how you give this analogy of the backpack because it's super chill. It's literally like a visualization process. For some of you who's listening on it's audio only on Apple or Spotify, you're probably not gonna see this unless you go on YouTube. So when Jill started this process, I totally like let myself relax and just following and just listening to her super soothing voice. I felt like I was already starting my meditation, just listening to that explanation. So you have the live session that you guide on a regular basis, right? So if someone wanted to join your live session, tell us a little bit about your live session, because after listening to a little bit of a sample you just did, just an explanation you just gave us, sure, a lot of people would want to just attend your session because of your voice. Like, wow, this woman has soothing voice. Like, I can totally relax just listening to her, like I did, right? I was like totally now just following your explanation there.
Thank you so much, Fawn. I can come back to, if there's time, I'll talk a little bit about my voice and my Yoga Nidra story. That's your question. There's a couple different places where people can find me, and everything I offer is really low key. I always encourage people, like, come and see if my sessions are a fit for you, that I lead the sessions, if you do like my voice, and then if not, just please try Yoga Nidra with someone. Right now, I'm offering live sessions both on Zoom. You can find that on my website, which I think Fawn will probably put in the notes, but it's ourbreathingspace.com, ourbreathingspace.com. For example, we're filming this in July. I think I have 6 sessions on Zoom in July. And once a month, I am on Insight Timer app. That's Insight Timer app. Do a live session on there. Usually about 60 to 80 people join in, and I love that it's international so that I'm able to help and support people, wherever you are in the world, whatever time zone. And those are all donation based. And then I have a couple recordings on Insight Timer. Prefer to do the Yoga Nidra live if I can. And then I also have recordings on my website. So if it's 2:00 in the morning or you're not able to get to the sessions, accommodate that way. And then if people want literally an in-person session on Zoom based on their time zone, I'm open to doing that as well.
Yeah, because that's a very good point, because you're very international when you offer your live session on Insight Timer. So I totally zone out on that time zone part. In communicating with you, you always give me a Pacific time zone. So I'm like, I didn't have to convert anything.
Yes.
Didn't have to use my brain too much on that. So
I used to be California based, so that's usually what I reference. And for a while, most of my clients were in California. Now it's changed because sometimes inadvertently on a session, at the end, I'll say, I hope you have a peaceful evening or morning. Somebody will write, I'm in Australia and it's 11:00 at night, or I'm getting ready for bed, or I'm just waking up. So I usually just reference the Pacific time zone. Currently, I'm here in Mexico, and that even is a bit of a Yoga Nidra story because Yoga Nidra helps you on an everyday basis. You're just navigating your life differently, really understanding what you want, what's in front of you, the opportunities. And so I started feeling out of sync with where I was in California. And I thought, well, what do I want to do now? And I had been coming down to Mexico to visit friends. And a very short story that I can share another time, but I bought a house down here, committed to move without any planning. So remember back when I was talking about, I used to be a planner, I used to be analytical. How is this going to work? House moved to Mexico. I'm down to 1.5 bins of cereal items that I left with a friend. A friend has my car, and I'm just going to see what's happening. It's part of the Yoga Nidra story of saying yes to things. Well, I referenced, if it's okay to share, I was going to reference with my voice. Obviously, you were like, I am leading sessions for 45 minutes with my voice. There's not a lot of quiet in between because we're giving those prompts of take your awareness to your wrist, to your elbow, to the heart space. And people don't know, I have a story. I have something in my backpack, which is I don't like my voice. I say it and I feel it differently after having studied Yoga Nidra and practicing Yoga Nidra, because it used to be, oh, I don't like my voice. I can't do that. Stand-up trainer and presenter for a while in corrections. And I knew that I was good at the material I was presenting. But before I would present and while I was presenting, I'm out of the backpack and like, oh, to your voice. Other people were funnier. Other people had a smoother voice. Well, here I am 12 years later. And it's not saying this with ego, but the feedback that I get from people is truly helping with my voice. I'm saying this because imagine if I had listened to the stuff in my backpack and gone to the train and thought, oh, Jill, you don't have a good voice. I came face to face with people saying, your voice is really healing for me, Jill. Your voice. And I can share stories of people who said, I have restless leg syndrome. There's no way I can lay down and stay still for your class. A friend of mine brought her mom who has Parkinson. Her tremors stop during Yoga Nidra for a short period after. Who said, you know what? I realize that when my mom passes away and I'm no longer a caregiver, I am moving to Hawaii. That is a place for me. I'm referencing this not because experiences are not because of me, because that's egoic, but they would not have had those experiences if I had listened to my thought of I have a good enough voice for Yoga Nidra. And when I went to so many trainings and I would sit and look at Dr. Halpern and think, I can't do this like he can. What if I embarrass him? What if I don't do it right? Yoga Nidra said to me, no, this is the way that you're to be of service of people. The message to listeners is whatever practice you do, slow down and listen, wake back up to yourself. Call it a life assignment or a divine assignment. What your next divine assignment is and what it looks like and how to do it. Like, don't fall asleep to that.
Beautiful. I love that. I want to put this in a conclusion of like Nidra. This helps you let go of the attachment, right? Like you were giving such a great example of attachment of your old thoughts that you don't have the good voice for this. How are you? And then you're starting to compare yourself from that thought. It leads to the next negative thought of like, how am I going to do this as good as my teacher? I mean, I obviously had those thoughts too. I was like, do people going to understand my accent, my English? Are they going to judge me? The truth is, like said, when you let go of that, then you have the awareness to how you use your voice. I mean, as we speak right now, I'm really excited to have you here. So I'm like, high pitched sometime, and I'm like speaking really fast. But when I'm leading the session, I'm like, ooh, switching gear, right? You got to go a little bit lower, go a little bit slower. So similar to you, I was able to let go of that judgment of my own self, right? And what the practice is, the awareness to each individual. Whatever you need, you normally would get. Wouldn't you say that?
Absolutely.
From each of the session that we practice, the more time we invest in the practice, is the more benefit we are going to get. Is the more awareness we're going to have of our own self, of our thinkings, our feelings, our emotion. And of course, when we stay present, we're able to be here and sense the surrounding and our own bodies. Like you probably feel the pain before, right? And then you just kind of like, okay, the pain is always there and you can't even think of anything else. But now in the session of Yoga Nidra, especially with Dr. Halpin's style, he focuses on healing. You know, when I mean, at least that was the session that we did together, Nidra for healing, right? Traditional Yoga Nidra for healing. So, and he used this to heal himself from being in a wheelchair. I forgot what arthritis he had exactly. And he was able to walk again.
He was actually, I think, bedridden. It was over a year, I believe, and did Yoga Nidra continuously. And part of it was the visualization. And then as Fawn is saying, like noticing your body. You know, if you have cancer, yes, that's terrible and it's real. If you have a body ache, broken bone, any of that, Fawn said it's the recognizing the attachment and the story to that. Pain can be real, but pain can also be re-emphasized by your nervous system. So again, if you have a pain, you have a diagnosis, and you're constantly on high alert, your nervous system wants to protect you. Really not. So it's back to you're pulling out of that backpack. Oh my God, I'm going to die tomorrow. Never going to recover. I have this stomach ache. It's going to last forever. You know, I have this bruise. It's going to last forever. My broken arm is never, ever going to heal. Telling yourself that and the nervous system getting correctly scared for you is huge. You know, the word healing lightly, I believe in that. I am not healing you. But as Dr. Halpern says, you are using your own body and your own thoughts and words to help heal yourself, to help your nervous system go, you know what? How much we need to protect you. This is how much we need to be alert. This is a time that we don't need to be on alert. And you can move into that theta and alpha state and out of the beta. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I you know, I just think it's so simple, but how do I put into this, Jill? It's super simple practice, right? That anyone can do it, but yet some of us keep talking ourselves out of like, I can't meditate, I can't lie down that long, or, you know, like you were sharing earlier of like, what is it? Like, I don't do headstand, like I don't put my legs up, you know, stuff like that. So we already like program ourselves to project certain belief that we can't do certain things, like, or we seem to have this new mantra of like, I have ADHD, I can't sit still. It's stuff like that. I mean, when you keep telling yourself that, there you go, you're manifesting it. You reconfirming that to yourself. So you're going to keep going that direction. But if you practice meditation or yoga nidra, and then you starting to be aware of the things that you probably don't like, and then are you willing to let go? I mean, that's been my experience. Are you willing to let go of the thing that you don't like? So, and what is it that you want to, that you like, that you want to be, that you want to do? So you replace your negativity with your positivity. And because in the session of Yoga Nidra, you're being guided to the whole process. It's not like, okay, here, you go figure. You totally handheld the entire time, the entire 45 minutes by your instructor or your guide, like you and me, right? And you don't have to figure out anything out, you know, for this process, except you just have to figure like what is it that you don't like? You just need to know what you don't like about yourself. What do you want to heal? What do you want to let go? Or what you are willing to let go? It's probably the better term. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, I absolutely. And I encourage people, you know, I think nowadays there are so many valid distractions, you know, for a lot of people, you know, trauma. I don't even want to say that trauma is valid. I think it's valid the way many people handle trauma because it's a lot. There are real world events, and I don't believe in like measuring, you know, this is worse than this, or what happened to me is worse than what happened to you. For me, though, there are so many practices, potentially so many people that can help you. And I encourage people, find what works for you. So even if you have gone like to a yoga asana, a yoga studio that does headstands, and you don't want to do headstands, find a teacher that will teach you how to like lay on a mat and help yourself. If you have tried meditation and your mind is too busy, I get it. All of our minds are super busy. I love Yoga Nidra. I'm a pretty peaceful person. And Fawn and I were talking beforehand, I'm renovating a house. I have to watch myself really carefully with my thoughts about renovating this house in a foreign country. And I don't speak really great Spanish, but I address it and I use my skills. So what I'm saying is, I really, really hope what people take away from listening or watching today, find something that works for you. And whether that's therapy, if you have to be on a special diet, meditation, whatever it is, go inward and really look at yourself and see and know where you are not happy, where you are not, I don't know all the words, just not happy, not content, not productive, not in that flow state. And don't accept that. Fine. Literally, like, I can't run a marathon. I don't want to run a marathon, but I love to walk slowly. And so I don't need to run a marathon to be healthy. I just need to know, you know what? When I go outside in the sun, that feels good for me. If you were listening right now and you're like, I'm in a wheelchair, I'm an amputee, I don't like the sun, find something that your body says yes to. Find something that your spirit says yes to. It could be a 5-minute meditation. It could be 45 minutes. It could be a 5-minute walk. It could be no walking. And Fawn and I were also talking earlier that a lot of my commitment and my passion, we don't just live in this world by ourselves. And so if I am not in a good state of mind, if I am not compassionate, if I don't know what's going on in my heart, I'm going to take it out on someone else. And I worked in corrections for 30 years. I worked with crazy horses for about 5 years. I actually didn't want to go to college, and my mom was like, you're going to college. But the commonality was those horses and those people were uncomfortable. Many of them had been abused. They turned around and did, like, even the horses were like, they were brought to me violent, and we can change that around. So sometimes people, I think, tend to say, well, I get to think my own thoughts. I get to act how I want to act. I don't have to be peaceful and loving. I don't have to have a good day. That's fine if you're living on an island by yourself. But when we know ourselves, and we know that we're in community, and we know how we take out our behavior on other people, that changes things. And this is not a Pollyanna, just be nice and have a good day and be positive. But the idea that if you can know yourself really well, like, there are times that I may not pick up a phone and call somebody because I'm not right with myself, or maybe I don't make a business decision, or maybe I don't make a critical decision, or certain ways that I am in my relationships with people, is I try to say to myself, look, Jill, if you're not right today, or you're not ready for that conversation, do something to get yourself right. And for me, I found that meditation and Yoga Nidra helps with that.
That's okay. That's really, really good. Thank you for sharing that, Jill. I also want to add that what you just said is that when sometimes you don't feel like calling someone because you don't feel like you are yourself. I want to add something to that sometimes some people who are not feeling themselves, and what do? Pick up the phone and call someone so they can vent about how they feel and how their day is not going so well. That's going outside of ourselves, right? We rely on something outside of us to help us to feel better. Wouldn't it be better that we just turn inward like you did and just process this? Because we have our own ability we have everything we like to heal. I mean, sounds so, what is the word, cliche, right? You have everything you ever need in this, in this life, right? In this body. But it's so true, though. It's all in our mind, right? It's all in our mind. It's all in our hearts. And how we utilize this body, these temples of ours, is a different story. And we need skills to tap into this. And the skill is the practice of meditation, which
absolutely,
which you have, reminded me to share this just because of you sharing your own experience of that. So really thank you for that. I mean,
and absolutely, some people may, between what both of us said, I think it's fine to reach out to people for support. And someone actually taught me, like they used to reach out and say, Jill, do you have time and do you have the capacity and do you have the bandwidth to listen to me right now?
Wow, that's very thoughtful.
I was like, thanks for asking, because that let me know like they needed the support. So I think it's fine to reach out, with people that to support you. For me, it's whether you're going out to work, out in your day, working with your kids, a loved one, whoever, and you're just not in that right space, try to get there beforehand. And it might mean reaching out to someone. I just see so many interactions where, again, it's the stuff in the backpack, but people are taking it out on someone else real time. And even real quickly, when I worked in the correctional facility, a lot of times I used to ask the young men when they would come up, and they didn't have like a lot of bad interactions with me, but I could see, some attitudes, some difficulties, some miscommunication. And sometimes I'd say, what, stop for a second. Who are you talking to right now? And not are you talking to? Who are you talking to right now? Who do you see in front of you? And they're like, what? And I was like, who am I? Oh, you're Miss Weston. And I'd say, okay, I'm not your mother from 5 years ago that did X, Y, and Z, or you just got off of a bad phone call. I'm not your girlfriend. Why are you walking up talking to me like that? Like, oh, well, that person made me mad. Or I was like, okay, I get that you're upset or you're mad. Let's figure out how to shift that, but don't take it out on me. Road rage. Someone cuts you off in traffic. Most people are probably going to speed up to give somebody the finger or throw up your hands or be mean or pull a gun. Then you get off the freeway and you're upset. The next person that you run into, guaranteed, most people are going to take out their emotions on that person. Has nothing to do with you. And that's the world that have seen for a while. I'm seeing. I watch interactions and I'm like, wow, in your backpack. Like that person doesn't deserve that. That old, somebody makes you mad at work or an interaction, you go home and you kick the dog and then the dog bites the baby and then the baby's screaming and it's like the baby didn't deserve it. The dog didn't deserve it. And it's that ripple effect. So anyway, just the message again is find practices that you can do a little self-inventory of where you're at and then find practices that will work for you, that you can shift that to the extent possible.
Absolutely. Again, Jill, I love talking to you. If I can call you and talk to you every day, I would do that, but I feel like I'm probably going to be invading your space too much if I do that.
I will tell you. Well, and I hope the listeners, I think between both me and you found sharing, the practice of yoga meditation, even mindfulness, that got something that was helpful for them today, and to come back and listen to parts. I love in your, I know it's different on different platforms, but how you have the little notes and the key points, and that if there was something that really spoke to someone, that your listeners will come back and listen to that one little piece or listen to the entire podcast. So I'm grateful that you offer so many great interviews to people.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, you and I have the same mission, is to help people, feel better through meditation, help people learn meditation so they can improve their personal life. Because if each of us individually feel at peace, guess what? When we interact in the community, we have a peaceful community, and peaceful community leads to a peaceful world. And this were your word on our last conversation, right? So just repeating that word because I love it. And again, I want to share with the listener that Jill actually has a program that train Yoga Nidra teacher. Anyone who wants to be a Yoga Nidra teacher, Jill has a program that she offers. Is it often, Jill? How often?
It's been about 2 years, partly to think about that. So during COVID, Dr. Halpern reached out and encouraged some of us to try it online, which I did. The people that were participating really liked it. I missed being in person, so my preference is in person. I might have something scheduled for 2025. I don't have anything for 2024, but certainly if people are interested in the program, they could reach out. I am looking at potentially doing some retreats here in Mexico and maybe back in the States. I've done some immersion programs where it's a 2-day, just like 6 practices of Yoga Nidra and lots of time for discussion in between. So teacher training might be in 2025. Definitely, I'll have a lot of sessions up until then.
Very nice. So if you have any questions for Jill, if you're interested in learning more about her practice, Yoga Nidra, please, there will be a link to her website somewhere that related to this podcast. You can click on and check Jill out and her practices and those schedules that she has for her live session that's been going on that she's offered. So I want to wrap up, even though maybe we'll have to have this conversation again, Jill, because I feel like we can keep going, and there's a lot more we can cover. But I think we did well for an introduction of Yoga Nidra today.
Oh, I'm happy to come back, and on some podcasts, I actually maybe lead like a little 10-minute session, a short session as a sampler. Happy to do that as well.
Yeah, that'd be great, actually, to fit that into the podcast itself. So, I mean, I do have the bonus episodes that I offer 5-minute meditation, but I'm open to the 10 minutes Yoga Nidra while we're talking, and maybe we can take a 10 minutes break, and then you can guide us through the session. Well, for today, thank you so much, Jill, for your time and your wisdom. And is there anything else you would like to leave us with today before we close off?
No, just an appreciation for, inviting me here today, and appreciation for the work that you do to get the word out about, as you said, just the benefits of meditation, the many different styles of meditation, and again, hopefully affecting people and communities.
Yes. It's, it takes the whole community to create ripple effect, and we start with one individual at a time, right? Thank you so much, Jill. I would definitely want to have you back in the future. We got to schedule something soon. So I want to wrap us up today with take a moment to practice some form of meditation, whatever form that is. And it can be 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever it is that you feel resonate with. It's a good start, especially if you have been away from the practice for a while, or if you haven't tried it yet. Take a moment to try. This is a good start. Anything is a good start if we start it, right?
Yes, start.
Thank you. And we'll see you in the next episode.
Hope you've enjoyed this episode and inspired to take the next step in your wellness journey to building more resilient and effective days at home and at work. I want to invite you to get in touch with me to learn more about the customized wellness programs that could benefit your team, your organization, whether it be retreats, workshops, 21-day meditation challenge, you name it. Let us collaborate to supercharge your well-being today.